today about the recovery after the cleft palate surgery. So it was a long road. It took 3 weeks before we could get the arm restraints off from the date of surgery. So if you watched the last vlog, you knew that on day 3, so if you count surgery day as day 1 because that happened first thing in the morning, then day 3 in the afternoon, evening is when we went home. So we kept Ava on a medicine like every 3 hours. So we were alternating, it was I think Tylenol and ibuprofen. We alternated that every 3 hours. We kept on that pain regimen until almost a week post-surgery. And that actually I think helped a lot, even though it did disrupt sleep a lot, because obviously if it's every 3 hours, you're getting up every 3 hours in the middle of the night to give her medicine. I do think that helped because other than the uncomfortableness and then having the arm restraints on, which wasn't her favorite, I didn't feel like she was in a lot of pain, especially by the end of that first week, which was really nice. So, hi. I'll include some footage here of Ava playing in the no-nos within a day of being back at home. So she took to them fairly well, which I was very, very grateful for, because I know, like I said, every kid's personality is different, every kid's temperament is different, how people experience pain, young or old, is all different. So there are kids who I think really hate the arm restraints. Thankfully, Ava was okay with them. Before we had the surgery done, we had gone through our house and removed any toy that we were worried about her putting in her mouth. I think I operated a little, like, I was definitely overcautious. There was some, because I wasn't thinking like, oh, well, she will also have the arm restraints on, and there are some things that she just, if her arms are straight out, won't be able to get into her mouth. That being said, I think she did pretty well. She found ways to work with the no-nos. That's, sorry, what I call the arm restraints, there are no-nos. Although they did make them hard for her to sleep in the crib. So let's talk a little bit about sleeping. So Ava likes to sleep on her stomach or on her side, and the big pair of arm restraints that we got from the hospital were perfect in those early weeks as far as restricting movement. And they had a Velcro loop across the shoulders in the back, and then you could kind of tighten or loosen based on how much movement you wanted to allow. So for instance, if she was crawling around on the floor, we would loosen it, because then she could kind of cross the arms more and have more movement there. But for things like sleeping, we'd want to keep it kind of tight, in part because if you think about across the back shoulders, even if you safety pinned it, it could still be like, well, I guess if you safety pin it, isn't as much of a choking risk, but it is kind of a choking hazard having that in the crib with them. And what we found is, when we loosened the arm restraints, she could wiggle her elbow out and then just pull her whole arm out of them. So obviously that's no good. And then if we kept them tight enough so she couldn't do that, then she was really uncomfortable in the crib at night, because if you're thinking about it and you're laying on your side, but you can only, as far as motion like this, you can only bring your arms like this, you can't really lay on your side like that, because then you've got this one arm just kind of hanging out. Like, at very least, if you have the arm restraints and you want to sleep on your side, you have to be able to kind of cross them like that. So Ava, especially those first 2 weeks when we had her primarily in the big no-nos, did not want to sleep in her crib. And so she was basically co-sleeping or being in arm with me or Dan for the first 2 weeks. It reminded me, maybe I already said this, but it reminded me so much of having a newborn, except for even when she was a newborn, she didn't sleep in the bed with us. So that was kind of a transition. It helped for me and Dan to take turns. He did take about a week off of work. Hi. And so he could kind of help me when he was still off work, taking some of the in-arm shifts or holding her at night. And so then I could have like a chunk of time where I could get some deeper sleep. Because the only problem with co-sleeping like that is that when I was holding her, I wouldn't sleep as deeply because I didn't want to worry about moving, or I was always kind of aware that she was there. So having a lot of coffee during that time period was really, really important for us. We did have as you might have heard from the last vlog, we did have my dad and stepmom there at the first part, and then they had to leave. There was a couple days where it was just me and Dan, and then my mom came into town, and so we did have a lot of support, which was nice. The other thing that was really helpful is we had some friends put together a meal train for us in that few days that we were in between help, because we don't have any family who live locally, and that was so helpful. It's something that is small, but to not have to think about what food am I going to prepare or what are we going to do for meals just really took a lot of stress off of us, so that was really helpful. Hi. So we went from, I hope this is all making sense. So after about that first week where we were doing medicine every 3 hours, then we started to go to just, I think we decided to go just Tylenol every 6 hours. And then we kind of moved that to just at night, and then we were kind of watching. And by the time we had the follow-up appointment with plastics the second week, we were kind of ready to try not trying to wean her off the pain meds and just see how she does. And she ended up doing really, really well. Like I said, with the no-nos at night, she was still uncomfortable, so sleep was still disrupted, but it was really interesting because even by the end of the first week, she was kind of back to her normal self during the day. And then at nighttime is just where it was harder. So like she would wake up and kind of be uncomfortable and stir. We'd try to start her off in the crib and cross her fingers that she would sleep there. She might start asleep and then wake up 1 or 2 times, and then we'd finally just pull her into the bed with us, because I did find that she slept or was soothed really quickly as long as she was in the bed. But again, like I said, then we weren't sleeping very well. So it was interesting to see her during the day, just kind of like herself but with arm restraints, and then how the sleep was affected. By the time we had that follow-up at Plastics had suggested that we try an alternative to the no-no situation to see if it would help her sleep better. So something we had done before the surgery is we had ordered through a website that I'll put below an extra pair of arm restraints, and we wanted ones that were really light because where we live is really, really warm. And what we found with those is that we started off the first couple weeks using them primarily at bath time because they were light enough where they dried really quickly, and then we didn't have to worry during the bath about constantly trying to make sure her hands weren't going in her mouth, that she wasn't trying to put things in her mouth, and it did help the stress a little bit. And so we had that extra pair, and what they suggested at the follow-up to Plastics was that we use, it's like athletic wrap called Coban wrap. It's the 3M, I think is the brand, to wrap around the Velcro parts of that other arm restraint. And we had noticed during bath time that she had figured out how to lift the little Velcro pieces of the lighter arm restraints, and so we were like, I can't put her in the crib at night with those, she will just take them off. But with the athletic wrap, they would stay on. It was a lot lighter, and what we found is that gave her a lot more movement, and she was able to finally get comfortable in the crib. So then all of a sudden, for the most part, she was sleeping in the crib all night. She was still kind of getting up about once a night, but it wasn't horrible at all, and we were finally like starting to get some nice sleep, which is good. That being said, we got the no-nos off, and it was wonderful. She is back to sleeping in her crib for the most part, but she is still getting up about once a night. Obviously, obviously that means we're probably going to want to do some sleep retraining with her, but because she is far enough away from all the surgeries, we are actually going to move her crib into her own nursery this weekend. And so we've been kind of holding off on the sleep training until we make that transition, because we're going to have to sleep train with that anyway. So yay, that's all moving forward, all really good. We have our final follow-up appointment with plastics this afternoon, but otherwise, we got through it. Let's see, some people were asking me, one, why she was supposed to be in the arm restraints for 3 weeks. I do think that surgeon's preference is my understanding, and our surgeon just prefers to have like err on the side of caution, basically, and so we eliminate all the risk of things going into her mouth and hurting the palate just for that full 3 weeks. They had her in the arm restraints. Other questions, I think, are things like feeding. We did not have to wean off the bottle before surgery, and again, I think that's surgeon's preference. So they were okay with Ava using the bottle for nourishment only, but they didn't want her to have her pacifier, basically because it puts a lot of stress on the palate, especially when it's brand new and just post-surgery. And so no pacifier was our surgeon's preference, but then we were still allowed to use the bottle. By the first week after surgery, there is supposed to be just liquid, so only bottle foods or bottle feeds, and then by the second week you can start to introduce purees. Now Ava specifically was only eating purees maybe once a day even prior to surgery. That is something we are working on with her, is the food stuff. She's not very food motivated right now. Like, she's just starting to show interest in what we're eating, and then if we try giving it to her, she primarily plays with it. I know that, and I've heard that you just have to keep offering it to her, but right now that's something that we are working on, and because that's where we were at pre-surgery, the food issue didn't seem too difficult for us anyway. If your kid is eating primarily like adult food, or mostly adult food, a couple bottles, it might be harder to do that, like first week liquid only, second week liquid and purees, and then finally back up to regular food. But for Ava, it was not so bad. I'm trying to think if I have any other advice as far as recovery goes. You know, it felt, like I said, it felt like having a newborn. It was such a weird experience because when I think about the surgery reminds me kind of how people warned me about labor, right? Is that, oh, there's this thing, it's going to be so awful, it's going to be so hard, and this building up of this, you know, huge amount of pain or discomfort, I think in your head can make it a lot worse than the actual experience is. Or it just kind of sets expectations for what you're walking into, so it's not a surprise, so it doesn't feel as bad. For me personally, I think it is the surprises that are harder with this kind of stuff. So the surgery, especially the first 48 hours, that first week, it is hard. Like, I don't want to sugarcoat it and be like, oh yeah, it wasn't so bad. Like, but I will say it wasn't as bad as I had it in my head, if that is any consolation or hopefully is a little comforting. And like I said, everyone's experience is going to be a little different, but for me that's kind of how it was. And then similarly to how the surgery was kind of like labor, the recovery period was kind of like having a newborn, where like you're getting up every 3 hours, you're not getting a lot of sleep, your whole focus is kind of around the baby again, you know. And I wasn't expecting to go through that, you know, like a year after giving birth, but yeah. While it was not easy, it was something we could get through. And so on that note, I want to tell everyone who does have the palate surgery coming up that, like, I know it is really scary, and I know you don't want to see your kiddo hurting, and I know that, but I want to tell you it's going to be okay. You are strong. You guys are going to get through this. And when you look back, it will be like, it will, one, be kind of a blur, and two, like, as soon as Ava started to be Ava again, and then again once we got the arm restraints off, it's like this big weight off your shoulders, you know. It is, for us, the last, for sure, surgery, although with PRS kids there's always the potential a couple years if they might need another one, but it's the last known surgery we have. And that weight, that, like, I don't have anything I'm worrying about in the future for her, or at least not in the immediate future, in the same way that you worry about a surgery. It was like having this big weight off my shoulders, and I feel like I can kind of breathe again. For those of you who follow our Instagram and Facebook, you'll know that 1 month after surgery, we were able to take the valve out of the specialty bottle, and she was able to take a bottle that is essentially a normal bottle and eat from it. That means using suction, something she couldn't do before surgery, and that was just 1 month after surgery. And it is so awesome and amazing, and I'm so proud of her. We got through the first year, and if you are just beginning your journey, you're gonna get here too, I promise. If you guys have any questions, oh, you got your bow. If you guys have any questions, put it in the comments below, and I will do my best to answer. Again, I always say this, I'm not a doctor, but I can tell you kind of what we did for Ava and what seemed to work for us, and let you know what my understanding of things are, and hopefully that would be helpful. Want me to have your bow? Okay. I think that's all for today. Thank you so much for all your support and love. I couldn't have done this without you. Like, finding this community has been one of the most helpful things for us. So I rambled a lot. I'm going to try to go now. All right, Ava, do you want to say goodbye? Oh, bye-bye. See you guys later. Are you excited? Are you excited you don't have to wear those anymore? Or are you just interested to play with them? Uh-huh. You can play with them. Ta-da! Yeah! Congratulations! Whoa, me? Who, me? Are you saying something to the camera? We'll go get, bye. We'll go get your bottle, okay?